This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Garrett. Brought to you in part by...
Founded by Jim Cramer, TheStreet.com is an independent source for stock market analysis. Cramer's Action Alerts Plus service is home to his multi-million-dollar portfolio. You can learn more at TheStreet.com/NBR.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special MLK Day holiday edition of Nightly Business Report. I'm Tyler Matheson.
And I'm Susie Garrett. The first 3 weeks of 2014 are in the books, and tonight we want to look at our economy in transition and how those changes may play out for the rest of this year.
That is right, Susie. There is a new leader at the Federal Reserve, the first female to run the nation's central bank. There is a great unknown, health care, and of course a job market that looks very much different today than it did just a year ago.
And that's where we begin tonight. One of the biggest things in the American economy undergoing significant change is the labor market. The unemployment rate is coming down, but the amount of people looking for work is at a record low. And those out of work for an extended period of time now find they have no safety net. Here's Hampton Pearson on the new face of the job market.
Veronica Perrier is caught in the crossfire of the new economy. She is among the more than 3 million Americans out of work for more than a year, including 1.4 million who lost their unemployment benefits at the end of 2013. That $1,200 a month has been an economic lifeline.
Not having that money is devastating. I don't know where I'm going to get money to pay my rent, to buy food, to pay car insurance. It almost leaves me speechless just trying to articulate what it means not to have, that money to fall back on.
What's next for the 40-year-old Maryland resident? It's complicated. Armed with a PhD in law enforcement, it was not that long ago the expert research assistant was earning more than $75,000 a year, owned a condo, had even been saving for retirement. But her contract jobs with nonprofits dried up when the sluggish economy meant less grant money available.
I have to have a job. You cannot survive in this world without it. So I have to keep, pushing myself.
Now she's working with a state-run job placement program trying to reinvent herself. Counselors here say getting the thousands of job seekers to realize the overall job market is constantly changing has been their biggest challenge in recent years.
It's just the magnitude of this particular economy and this particular job market. We tell people that you may have 4 or 5 different careers before you retire.
December 2013 was the weakest month of hiring in 3 years. Just 74,000 jobs added to the economy versus 214,000 on average for the previous 4 months. The unemployment rate dropped to 6.7% because twice as many people, including recent college graduates, simply gave up looking for work. Enough to push the labor force participation rate down to 62.8%, the lowest in 36 years.
If you look over the past year, the share of the population in the labor force fell by almost a percentage point, which is actually huge at this stage in recovery.
The retirement of millions of baby boomers is also shrinking the labor force. The average retirement age is now just under 60, with about 25% of the oldest boomers retiring early because of the sluggish job market. That's according to a recent MetLife survey.
Some of the folks who are leaving the labor force due to retirement probably would have stayed in longer had the labor force been stronger.
The latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows more than 8.7 million jobs lost between January 2008 and February 2010. Since then, the government says there's been an increase of more than 7.5 million jobs. The bottom line, the economy is closing the jobs gap, but more than 5 years after the recession, we're still playing catch-up. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
Well, let's be clear, there are jobs out there, but sometimes they may not be the kinds of jobs that many people want. Take manufacturing. The name alone conjures up images maybe of molten steel and assembly lines. In some cases, these jobs do pay more, but manufacturing has an image problem, one that's hurting hiring at companies desperately seeking new workers to meet growing demand and to replace an aging workforce. Mary Thompson has more.
They're not pretty, but they pay. That's a widely held view of manufacturing jobs, a view industry members want to change.
It's innovation in technology. It's robotics. It's 3D printing. I think there isn't a general understanding of what manufacturing is, so we need to open up our doors and invite people in.
Those who accept the invitation will find there are 600,000 jobs waiting to be filled, according to the Manufacturing Institute. The jobs becoming available as older workers retire, domestic industries like energy expand, and more manufacturers bring work back to the U.S. because of rising labor costs in Asia.
One challenge, getting a younger generation to buy into a career at work they typically associate with their grandparents' generation.
And a challenge it is. A 2012 survey finding that while 87% believe manufacturing is important to U.S. prosperity, manufacturing jobs rank last among 18 to 24-year-olds as the ones they wanted. To change the perception, Deborah Kerrigan, dean of Dunwoody College of Technology in Minneapolis, says companies have to sell prospective employees on a different manufacturing world, where factories are not sweatshops and an employee's input and effort is valued. She also says schools have a role to play.
The high schools have to bring those trades back in the school to give a great foundation to open up opportunities for students who don't want to be four-year degree students.
As for the employers, the Manufacturing Institute's Jennifer McNelly says they need to show potential hires there is room for advancement.
Part of what's evolved in manufacturing is the opportunity to grow. Individuals in manufacturing today operate in teams, and in fact, oftentimes the biggest decisions happen on the front line.
All part of a manufacturing makeover needed to attract a younger workforce. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Mary Thompson in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Joining us now to talk more about these issues, Robert Johnson. He's former CEO of Black Entertainment Television and now chairman of the RLJ Companies, an investment firm that he founded. Also with us, Mark Zandi, chief economist of Moody's Analytics. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Let me begin with you, Mark, and ask you that, you heard our report, still a lot of Americans out of work. Where are they going to find jobs? And will we ever, find those jobs? Will those lost jobs from a couple of years ago ever come back?
Yeah, there will be more jobs. I think housing will be a key source of jobs over the next 2 to 3 years. Home construction will pick up quite significantly. That's construction jobs, manufacturing, trucking jobs, financial services, landscaping, cable hookup, retail, a lot of jobs. And that should help alleviate some of the unemployment problems in different parts of the country. Longer run, I would expect more job growth in high-end services, accounting, legal, media, advertising, computer data processing, management consulting. Of course, those are very highly skilled jobs, require lots of education, and they're for the high end.
Mr. Johnson, your businesses touch a lot of corners of the American economy, from media to automobiles to finance. Are you hiring this year? And if so, are you able to find the kinds of employees to fill those jobs?
Well, I think, Tyler, that the way we look at hiring across all the companies that we have investments or ownership in, whether it's automobiles, hotels, financial services, private equity companies that we acquire, it's based on where we're going to find the productivity. And if we can find the productivity in more people doing the right kinds of jobs, we will hire. But we can find productivity and more innovation and more technology. We look at it that way. And I think that's where most of the businesses where I either serve on a board or involved in look at the particular labor market today. We want to see more people working, but we have to have more people working in a productive manner, generating the kind of products and services that the consumer's ready to buy, and also allowing us to compete with lower cost labor and more efficient services abroad.
We hear from people who are out of work how much they do want to work, Mark. And yet there's one group that seems most vulnerable, according to a lot of the surveys that I've seen. These are the people who are around 50 years old or so, maybe making under $50,000 a year. They're very vulnerable. They're very anxious about their future and their inability to find work. I mean, what's the prognosis for these people? And if they don't find work, what does it mean for the economy?
Yeah, I worry a lot about this group. If you're in your 50s, early 60s, you've been out of work for some time, your skill set's eroding, your marketability is eroding. To get back into the workforce is going to take a big effort, a big change. You're going to have to move. You're going to have to go back and get new skills, re-educate. It's going to be very, very difficult to get this group re-engaged in the labor force and back working again. If we're unsuccessful in getting these folks back into the workforce working again, the economy is going to be much diminished. These folks have lots of experience, lots of talents. They want to work, and the economy is going to be a lot smaller because we can't engage them. And moreover, it's going to be tough on us fiscally because if these folks can't work, then they're going to demand and need government services. They're going to call upon Social Security earlier than they otherwise would, and Medicare and Medicaid. And so it's going to put pressure on government and on our deficits and budget. So we have to work really hard to get that group back in. But I'll have to say, Susie, that's the group I worry about the most going forward.
Mr. Johnson, let me turn the conversation to a topic that has become sort of front burner in recent weeks, and that is one of income and wealth inequality. You're a self-made guy, but I know you think about the gap between rich and poor in the United States, which seems only to be expanding. How would you go about addressing that? How worried are you about it? What would you do to fix it?
Well, let me first echo what Mark said. I think when you look at the demographics of the United States and therefore the United States labor force and also the consumer group, more and more of those individuals are going to be minorities, African Americans and Hispanics. And if we don't provide a way to effectively introduce this group to the labor market in a way that they can accumulate decent paying jobs and therefore wealth in home ownership and other assets, we will have some very serious, not only fiscal problems in this country, but also, I think, social problems. So to your question, my belief is that in order to change the dynamics, you've got to do something with the tax code to encourage businesses to invest in urban areas, to encourage business to put money into the hands of minority entrepreneurs, because minority entrepreneurs tend to hire minority workers just because they live in the neighborhood for the most part, and that's where their particular culture is. And so to me, you've got to play around with the tax code. We got trillions of dollars sitting offshore. How about bringing some of that money back in the United States under a program where if a company invests in an urban area or invests with minority businesses, that they get a tax deduction, the country gets the benefit, more and more people are put to work. I've even proposed something that I borrowed from the NFL called the RLJ rule, like the NFL's Rooney Rule, which says a owner in the NFL must interview an African-American coach potentially before hiring one. I think if we adopted that for all corporate America, that would say that before you could fill a vacancy or fill a position, you must interview a minority candidate for a job. I think we begin to put the focus on where jobs are needed, and that's in reducing the number of African Americans and other minorities who are grossly underemployed in this country.
Well, it's an ongoing debate for sure, Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And you as well, Mark. We appreciate both of you joining us today. Robert Johnson of the RLJ Companies and Mark Zandi of Moody's Analytics.
Well, jobs surely will be a big challenge for the new head of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen. What to expect from the new chairwoman when we come back. But first, how you feel about the changing jobs landscape.
I work in a profession that had close to 40% unemployment a few years ago, and now things seem to be picking up, at least in that market sector.
I have a job right now, and I think I'm in a good position in my career. I think I'd be worried for people, graduating college or looking for jobs to find a good job.
The field with which I got my degree has minimized environmental studies. It's very difficult. I am going for my yoga teacher training, so I feel like flexibility is important with people if they want to find a job or find something that suits them.
On February 1st, Janet Yellen takes the helm as chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, becoming arguably the most powerful woman in the free world. Her decisions will move markets around the globe and impact the pocketbooks of ordinary Americans. At 67, she's the first woman to lead the central bank in its 100-year history. Now, change at the top of the Fed is rare, with only 2 chairmen in the past 25 years. And Yellen takes over at a critical time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
From the moment she was nominated,
the nomination is confirmed.
Yellen took on the responsibility of guiding the U.S. economy at one of its most challenging times in history.
She doesn't have a crystal ball, but what she does have is a keen understanding about how markets and the economy work.
Born and bred in Brooklyn, Yellen learned early on about the workings of the economy from her parents, who told her about their struggles during the Depression. Her interest in economics took her to Yale University, where she studied with the best. Her two mentors were Nobel Prize winners. Even her husband is a Nobel laureate.
She's extraordinarily well-rounded for this position.
Yellen served on President Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors, and for 6 years was president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. Since 2010, she's been the second most powerful voice at the Fed after Ben Bernanke, as vice chair of the central bank's board of governors.
I often found that I would go to Janet when I didn't know it, she did.
Now, as chairwoman, Yellen faces the daunting task of unwinding the Fed's massive economic stimulus, the controversial bond buying program initiated by Bernanke.
I would agree that this program cannot continue forever.
But now comes the hard part. Yellen must oversee what Wall Street calls the taper. Taper too much of those bond purchases and too fast, the economy could choke. Taper too slowly, it could fuel inflation, one of Wall Street's biggest worries. Another challenge? Yellen's policy moves also need to promote job growth. Hiring has picked up and the unemployment rate is coming down, but not fast enough to encourage a dramatic change in business and consumer spending.
My colleagues and I are acutely aware of how much workers have lost in the past 5 years.
But perhaps Yellen's toughest task will be to clearly explain this new chapter of Fed policies to investors, lawmakers, and to the American public. How well she communicates her vision could dictate the future and success of the world's largest economy.
Our country has come a long way since the dark days of the financial crisis, but we have farther to go.
And joining us now is Bob Brusca. He's chief economist of Fact and Opinion Economics. Mr. Brusca, welcome. How different do you think Janet Yellen's Fed will be from Ben Bernanke's?
Well, I don't think that her way of operating is going to seem very different to many people. Part of it is that Bernanke had this opportunity to help the economy grow, and his lessons from the Great Depression told him that he should be easy. And I think Janet she's not going to be an easy money person, but she's going to try to help the economy a little bit more. That's her ideology.
Yeah, she certainly has to help the economy, Bob. I mean, you know, as you look back in Federal Reserve history and you look at various moments of crisis and what the Fed chiefs focused on, you know, Volcker focused on inflation. Bernanke was stabilizing the economy. When we're going to look on the tenure of Janet Yellen, what's it going to be?
Well, I think she's going to manage the transition. We're no longer in a period where we think the economy is slipping back in recession or we're going to have deflation. Those risks are still there, but we're also starting to grow, and we're worried a little bit more about whether the size of the Fed's balance sheet or other things will bring inflation around. Now, I don't think those risks are on the table for this year, but those will be coming in the second and maybe third years of her administration, and those are things she's going to have to deal with.
How difficult a trick is it going to be for her to dial back on the stimulus that has been in the system for several years now?
Well, that's going to depend on the economy. You know, if the economy performs well, she won't find dialing back very difficult. But if the economy isn't performing, then I think she's going to find that dial is stubborn and hard to move.
You know, Bob, Wall Street has very strong opinions of the various Fed chiefs. How do you think Wall Street is going to respond to Janet Yellen?
I think they're going to respond well. She's been in the Fed, at the Fed. She's been in the public eye for so long. She's not an unknown quantity. And I think that she's a very good economist. She's been a good leader. And I think that she's going to have Wall Street warm up to her pretty quickly.
And you get Janet Yellen and a Nobel Prize winner, too, right under the same roof, her husband. So it's an interesting thing. How influential has he been with her?
Well, I don't know any personal details, but clearly they've worked together. They've written papers together, and she's a fine economist in her own right. She's certainly lucky to have a husband with such an expertise, but I think that Janet holds her own water.
I'm sure she does. Bob Brusca, thank you very much. Bob is chief economist of Fact and Opinion Economics.
Coming up next, the changing face of healthcare. It's here. How will it continue to evolve? That's next. But first, how do you feel about the changes in the healthcare system?
I actually really like the healthcare law. I think that it's a step for America to join the 30 or so nations that all have universal health care.
From a medicine perspective, it's nuts. I can't imagine what it's like when you actually go to a hospital and have to have something done. So, I don't know what can fix it.
And I do think that not enough money is, kind of going towards social programs to help people in lower economic status get health care.
I'm a freelance employee and I couldn't afford it prior to Obamacare, and now I can. So I think it's just tremendous.
The U.S. healthcare system is heading into one of its most monumental years since the 1960s. This year, Americans will get their first look at how the Affordable Care Act changes the way they get treated by physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, and others in our huge healthcare system. Now, one of the leaders in this changing marketplace is the Cleveland Clinic. President Obama has called it a role model of healthcare delivery. Joining us now, we're happy to have Dr. Toby Cosgrove. He's the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic and author of a new book, The Cleveland Clinic Way. It's a look at trends that will define the future of medicine. Toby, great to have you on the program.
Nice to be here, Susie.
Let me begin by asking you a question you probably get asked a lot. I mean, now that the Affordable Care Act is here, a lot of people are wondering about two things: quality of care and cost. Is care going to be better, worse, the same? And is it going to cost us more?
Well, I think the important thing is that the Affordable Care Act started out to do three things. It wanted to improve quality, and I think the transparency that's coming with it is going to help quality, because we've seen quality go up as we have more transparency. We also know that access is a big issue around healthcare. We can't really tell what the access is going to be like around insurance because it's too early to tell that, but we do know that we've made significant improvements in making access available at all of our locations. We've taken our emergency rooms, and there's now 11-minute wait from door to doctor. We have same-day appointments, all of which has the ability to improve the access of the patient to a physician in which they want to see. And the real question is going to be around cost. And frankly, I think it's too early to tell about that. We know that there's going to be less money paid to hospitals, so we're going to have to be more efficient, and hopefully that'll bring the cost down across the entire country.
Do you expect, Dr. Cosgrove, that the Affordable Care Act will increase the likelihood that people will seek out care, or will it decrease it? I've spoken to several physicians recently who fear that maybe it will decrease their willingness to seek out care as they realize that their deductibles are so much higher than they used to be.
Well, I think one of the things we've seen recently is we've seen the rate of inflation of health care go down over the last several years, and now the high deductibles are now 33% of insurance policies. And I think that's one of the things that accounts for the decreasing rate of inflation of health care. It was the first time we've seen that low in a number of years. So I think that remains to be seen. There certainly is going to be more of an emphasis on individual taking responsibility for the financial aspects of their health care.
So we are at sort of an inflection point about healthcare with this Affordable Care Act. And obviously the Cleveland Clinic has a very successful business model. But given that we're going into this new phase, what kinds of steps is the clinic taking this year, today, to prepare for all the changes? I mean, are you hiring more, or you're letting people go? Are you cutting? You talked about costs. Are you cutting costs? Are you thinking about acquisitions?
Actually, we're doing several things. We know that we have to have a more efficient delivery system, and we're taking costs out. And we've taken in the past 2 years $180 million out of our purchasing, and we need to take another $330 million this year out of our cost of delivering care for our organization, and more in the outgoing years. We're also looking at efficiencies of healthcare by bringing hospitals together so we can share resources and have collaboration, so everybody doesn't have to have their own data center and everybody doesn't have to have a huge back office to support them. I think that will all help us drive the efficiency of the healthcare system.
If you were the healthcare czar, Toby, and you could make one change that you think would be the best change in the way we receive and you deliver healthcare to us, what would it be? Would it be a single-payer system? Would it be paying doctors just a salary and getting away from fee-for-service? What is it?
Well, I think there's lots of things we have to emphasize. If you look at what causes premature death in the United States, 40% of it is related to behavior: smoking, lack of exercise, and obesity. And if we're going to reduce the cost of health care across the United States and have a healthier population that's living longer, we have to address those things. And I think we can do that by raising the understanding of those problems across the entire country. And I hope that we'll see that come in the next future years.
All right, that's an interesting answer. Thank you so much, Toby. Very nice for you to come and share this conversation with us. Dr. Toby Cosgrove, CEO of the Cleveland Clinic.
And finally tonight, as you know, today is the Martin Luther King holiday, the federal holiday that honors the slain civil rights leader. Last week, Dr. King would have been 85. King campaigned to end segregation and fought for racial and economic equality across the United States. His I Have a Dream speech, which called for an end to racism in the United States, is widely regarded as one of the most stirring pieces of oratory in American history. It most surely provided a defining moment in the American civil rights movement. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968, at the age of 39. This holiday was created back in 1983 when then-President Ronald Reagan signed it into law. Only 2 other people have national holidays in the United States honoring them, George Washington and Christopher Columbus. And that's going to do it for this special edition of Nightly Business Report. I'm Tyler Matheson. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Susie Garib. Have a great evening, everyone. And Tyler and I will be back here to see you tomorrow.
Nightly Business Report has been brought to you in part by...
Founded by Jim Cramer, TheStreet.com is an independent source for stock market analysis. Cramer's Action Alerts Plus service is home to his multi-million-dollar portfolio. You can learn more at TheStreet.com/NBR.
I'm Susie Garib with a Nightly Business Report news brief. 2013 was a terrific year for stocks. The Dow rose more than 20%, even passing the 16,000 mark for the first time ever. So what can investors expect in 2014? Well, with the economic recovery slowly gaining strength, along with some clarity from the Federal Reserve about its next moves, and a 2-year federal budget deal locked up in Congress, bulls are forecasting another year of record highs and double-digit returns in equities. But the bears are worried that job growth will slow and that with the Fed winding down its asset-buying stimulus, interest rates will rise, the recovery in housing will slow down, and stocks could stall. But you can count on us to have all the news and analysis all year long. Be sure to tune in to Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.